Welcome to the Creative Playing Podcast Network. Join us as we review our favorite RPGs, collectible card games, MMOs, video games, PC games, and bring up interesting topics and things that we'd like to share with everyone. Sit back and enjoy the show.
All right, this is Jim, and welcome back to Creative Playing Podcast Network. Today I've got Dan and Jon from MajiMonsters here to do a interview for their new product that's coming out. Hi, Dan. Hi, Jon.
Hey, how's it going, Jim?
Hey. Hi. Sorry, Jon. Hey, guys. So, quick question for somebody who doesn't know. What is MajiMonsters?
Okay, so the way we've been telling people that are new to MajiMonsters is if you've ever played a role-playing game like Dungeons and Dragons before, and if you've ever played a monster-catching game like Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, any of those type of genre games, it's a marriage of both. So if you like fantasy role-playing, the campaign setting that we present is a gritty fantasy role-playing world, but it has, softer undertones of monster catching, and there's a lot of different elements that are thematic from that genre into it. So if you like both of them, this is the game that a person that plays these types of games would love. If you like one or the other, you'll probably love the experience.
Okay, great. I know I've showed it to a few of my friends because we're looking to do like a mini 2v2 type of binder versus binder action and go ahead and either tag it on to the end of this recording or put it as a separate one later on this week because I want to hurry up and get this out for you guys. Because also, you guys are currently running a Kickstarter. Want to go ahead and tell me about that?
Yeah, we launched. We're about halfway into it right now. We just actually hit over 60% this morning, so we are a little more than halfway to go now. About $7,400 on a goal of $12,000, and if we make it, we'll be able to print the book. So we are very excited.
What kind of tiers do you guys have for your Kickstarter?
We have a lot of tiers. If someone donates as little as $10, they can get a starter set, which will include pre-made characters, one of each class of characters, as well as their companion monsters, and then 2 encounters worth of material. We include 2 because there's 2 very different kinds of encounters. One where you're a binder facing a rival binder or someone else directing a Magi monster versus your own forces, and then encounters with wild Magi monsters that you can actually capture and bind to your service as well. And then as you go up from there, the rewards progress. So you can get the digital version for $25. You can get online content for $35 plus the digital version. And the book starts at $50, which will probably be the retail price. And then past that, there's all kinds of goodies you can get. We have a player's kit, which includes dice and combat trackers at I believe the $100 tier, Jon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then once you get up into the higher tiers, which we've sold a bunch of already, you can actually design your own monsters that will be included in the book. So if that's something that you are interested in, it's something that we're offering. In fact, as we're recording this, we just sold our 7th one, which means we're limited to 3 more left. So if it's something that interests you, you want to hop onto that.
See, that is awesome because I have looked over the monsters and they are pretty cool. I myself am currently at the binder level, so I'm really looking forward to seeing this pass.
Oh man, we can't wait. We are so excited about the type of enthusiasm and feedback we've been getting on our Kickstarter page, both between emails and the comment sections, and all of our outreach through forums and stuff like that. People have just been flooding us with this type of stuff, so that's good to hear.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've been reading over the comment section, and you guys have gotten a lot of back and forth with everybody, keeping everybody up to date of what's going on pretty regularly as well.
Yeah, we said going into this is a community-driven thing. It's kind of the reason why we wanted to have people give us their ideas. We also believe that, if someone's going to be giving us money, we owe them to answer their questions as soon and as thoroughly as possible.
That's awesome. Because trust me, that definitely helps most Kickstarters going on. So for Magi Monster, what is basically the default setting for it? So when you're playing the game, what kind of what is the storyline for the background?
Yeah. Well, we've created a story where the setting that's presented in the core rulebook is that there was an old empire of Magi that controlled the Empire, and they created the MajiMonsters in their attempt to what they would call dragons. And through whatever happened, some cataclysm happened, and the MajiMonster broke free and basically destroyed all of civilization. We really want to leave that to the Dungeon Master or Game Master's discretion on what has happened or what has been lost to antiquity and what is still available. But the basic premise is that it's a fantasy land where there's ruins to be explored, but the world is dangerous. And the reason binders are so heroic and necessary is because they're able to bind these monsters that are roaming around wild in the world to magical crystals called drajules through magical rituals, and that is what they can arm themselves with to survive the wild.
All right, great. With the drajules that you mentioned, how common are those in the game world?
That's actually a really good question that we've been talking a lot about. John, let me throw this over to you. How frequent do you see a drajule being presented?
They're pretty rare at the moment because it's a fairly recent magical technology that the NPCs and characters have figured out how to use. So it hasn't been widespread yet. It's not to the point where everybody's managed to catch a monster for their own. There's still like settlements of humans where like nobody owns a monster, and all that really protects them from wild monsters is the big walls that they've built around their town. And so that's another reason that binders are sometimes respected, but also sometimes feared because people don't quite understand what's going on. They just see somebody's walking around with a monster. But they serve a huge purpose in being able to protect their towns or protect merchants who are traveling between villages, things like that. Or sometimes they can use it for, evil causes and do shakedowns on random peasants.
Right. And Jim, I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I like that question is because it presents an interesting dynamic between what is a flavorful story setting and also what works in the mechanics of the game. Because if we make them something that's too rare, players will treat them, in the metagame differently. And it's one of the best and most rewarding things of playtesting is finding that balance between what works to fit the game from a rules standpoint so players can't abuse things or, if drajules were so rare that they were a treasure in and of themselves, I find that to be a very compelling story reason, but that doesn't always translate well into a game. So it's something that we've been playing with for a while, and it's also something that our backers have been asking us about, but not just the rarity of drajules, but like what happens if you lose one or it gets destroyed or things like that. And that's all been the fun of this experience on Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's been one of the things I was thinking about is like, quick question I had though is, can you empty a drajule to use it again with another monster, or is it permanently bound to that monster?
In our playtests, we've been able to transfer from one to another. If you're familiar with the Dungeons & Dragons lore, we treat the drajules sort of like a Lich's phylactery, if you're familiar with that. I'm not sure. Yeah. So, I mean, if you were to slay a MajiMonster, its essence would retreat into its drajule, and then you restore it and then have it summon it again later when it's healed to take a physical form. And again, like I said, it kind of gets back to what I was talking about earlier, about what would happen. And because drajules are going to be a very dynamic part of the game, you can customize drajules with glyphs and seals and things that let them do fun new things. So you can make a drajule stronger at capturing a monster. You can also make it so that if you put a certain glyph on it, if you use a certain technique from a monster of a certain affinity, it does more damage. Or maybe the more attempts you have at binding a monster, the easier it becomes. Those are just some of the examples that we've workshopped so far. So it's not something that I want to say 100% on yet. I feel like we might have to, because I feel like it's going to be something that players are going to want to do. What are your thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I agree. Different people are going to want to do different things.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the idea of modding out your equipment and stuff. So that, I'm a huge fan of modding out your equipment and stuff. So that way, it can do exactly what niche you want your player to do. Right. Especially if, from a GM point of view, that sounds like a great idea of you could have the wise man on the hill who knows how to add a glyph to your jewel. What are you going to do for him to get that glyph on your jewel?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's all part of, storytelling and, finding that thing that's going to motivate your players. So I agree with you there.
Another quick question is, what's the dynamic going to be between a binder and the MajiMonster it just captured? Have you guys set any game mechanics into that, or is it just going to be player flavor?
It's actually a very common question that we've gotten when we've play tested it. And when I've been running the games, I have always made it that the monsters were not happy. They were still bound to some kinds of servitude. But it's really interesting question you ask, because our playtesters will specifically spend time developing or role playing that relationship with their new monsters. I can remember in the playtest that I ran with Jon, even though there was a plot in front of them that they could follow, the players would be like, no, I want to get some food for my monster and bring him out and make him meet the team, and we're gonna go run a lap together and build up a rapport. And that's really fun to see from players.
The old team builder moment. Hey,
yeah.
All I gotta say is Charmander, Charizard, everybody knows that old Pokemon dynamic, and that was always a great tongue-in-cheek, because I can see quite a few of my players pulling that at their table if the monster doesn't want to do it.
Oh yeah, and it's an important part of the game too. I mean, the game master is going to be role playing all these monsters that are in the party. I mean, the player is going to treat them like an NPC. They're still under their control. But if a monster's not happy, that player, there's a psychological element to that there. I mean, and with the monster that Jon played, I think that relationship, Jon, between you and your monster was one of my favorites from our playtesting sessions.
I role played both myself and also the monster at times, and Dan kind of picked up on the personality of the monster, and it was pretty funny, the interactions we had with it.
He would buy it bows and stuff like that, just things that would make it feel pretty, and it was very fun.
I can see it now, the MajiMonster, pet show.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Pokemon. Clearly a lot of influence from Pokemon and other monster catchers in here. So, if this is something, if you've played, Pokemon on the Game Boy or the card game or anything like that, and you're just kind of interested in role playing games, you get a lot of that outlet here through MajiMonsters to have that experience.
Well, so that's a cool bridge, because it'll bring the Pokemon crowd to the role playing crowd. If they're not already in it, but I know a lot of folks that
MajiMonsters is a gateway RPG.
And you got to beware the gateways.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be able to branch the generations of gamers, because now you have gamers like maybe in their late 30s, early 40s that have been playing D&D for years, and they have kids that are like 7 and 8 and playing Pokemon, and this is it's so perfect for the two of them to play together, and they can bond.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I see MajiMonsters as a perfect family game, that way you can sit down as a whole family unit and get to play it. So that way the kids can have the cool monster angle, the parents can have the role-playing angle. I know quite a few role-playing families, so I'm like, yeah, you guys need to look into this Kickstarter, because it looks really fantastic.
Thanks, man.
So, quick question. Will there be any monsters that can't be bound in the game, like for adventures and things?
Not currently. It's a great idea. In fact, we actually had a backer just comment on something along these lines, where he said, "What if there was a class that did not use the dredge rules to bind monsters? What if they were like an aesthetic? They completely did everything based off friendship or building an empathy." Because we've been almost as we're very engrossed in the mechanics of the game. So having a monster like that would mean a serious system, not change but addition. So at this point, we don't have something like that. We've given ourselves a year to have at least 2 playtest periods. If we find that that's something that enough players are asking for, it's definitely something we'll consider putting in.
That's cool. Yeah, because
we definitely thought about having possibly like a legendary monster that there's maybe only one of in the game, but it's really really hard to catch, and you hear rumors about it for maybe like your first couple sessions of gaming, and you go, oh man, we got to track down this legendary monster.
Yeah,
and then have the group fight over who gets to catch it.
Yeah. That's the real team building exercise. Who gets the +5 sword?
We were playtesting for a group at Unpub in Baltimore yesterday, and that was like their first question. It's just like, well, hold on, can I catch this and give it to her? And I was like, yeah, of course. So, that's part of building a team and, that type of relationship. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I can't wait to do it. But yeah, in previous test plays, if you find that one that you're like, we're never going to get this opportunity again, it just becomes a free for all. Everyone just starts trying to catch it. And but it's definitely a very fun part of the game because monsters don't like being bound. So if they can't overcome the odds, they'll just run away.
And hey, that's the fangirls chasing the movie star type of deal. So for the system wise, what kind of dice system do you guys use?
We have gone through a couple different iterations, and the way that we ended it was most attacks and checks are made on rolling 2 6-sided dice. And for skill checks, trying to get people away, if you have a D&D mindset, they're not tied to skills or anything like that. It's just 2 6-sided dice, and then you can buy character abilities that improve your odds for certain types of skills. It really wears down on a lot of the unnecessary record keeping, in our opinion. For a combat system, 2 6-sided dice, and then you add your attack, whatever score it is you're using to hit, which is designated by the monster's technique that it uses. And then if that is equal to or higher than the defense of the target, it's a hit, and then you apply the effect. But then we have a lot of other things that will modify that. So each Magi monster has a grit pull. A grit is just an abstract representation of how hard it is, how willing it is to fight for its binder. And when it spends grit, it can upgrade its attack dice instead of D6s to D8s. So it's going to give you a bump in the median score that you're going to roll, and odds are it's going to give you better chances to hit and much better odds of getting a critical hit. The problem is once you run out of grit, you don't have that flexibility anymore. So you're not going to, it's part of grit management is part of the strategy. And then past that, binding, using a binding die or binding a MajiMonster, we'll use a D20. And then all of the techniques will use the dice that are commonly associated with Dungeons & Dragons. So D4s, D8s, D10s, D12s, all those fun ones.
Awesome. Basically, grit's there to make sure when you want to do it and you want to do it well, boom, there's your grit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Grit gives you other options too, because you can always use it to increase your chance to hit or increase your damage. But certain attacks also have an option where if you spend a grit, maybe it does something extra, maybe something that it already is doing, it does it better. So certain abilities use grit, and certain classes get more uses out of it than others.
Yeah, like one of the things that John mentioned there, there's ranged attacks where if you spend grit before making the attack roll, you can increase the range of the attack. And there's sometimes where you can use grit to change the action type. So there's a technique that lets MajiMonsters leap long distances, and instead of using that as a movement action, they can use it as what's called a round option, which means they could do that in addition to moving. And one of our players was using that a lot yesterday during the demo at the Unpub.
Yeah, I was looking at the Alchemist class as one of my favorite out of all of them. So speaking of classes, what classes do you guys have for the binders?
Well, I'll start with the Alchemist. And then the Alchemist is actually what John test played for us during our test play sessions. Yeah. And we are really excited about that because the Alchemist necessitated a lot of rules change, especially on experience points. They're all about creating and changing things with affinities, the actual abilities of the MajiMonsters, and they can actually breed MajiMonsters. So when they breed MajiMonsters, their bred monsters grow and experience so much faster compared to a caught one. So they can catch up and play and be active in the game as well. They're very, very fun class, more of a support class than an outright combat class, but tons of flexibility, and they give the team a lot of options because it got to the point where John was basically a monster breeder for hire at one point in the playtesting we did. In addition to that, we have the Concordant, who was born touched by magic. The lore of our game is when the monsters were created back in the old Empire, magical affinities were much more common, but the cataclysm caused them to become much more erratic, and since then, humans have been born with a touch of magic that they can control to a limited effect, but they have a synergy when they control or direct MajiMonsters that have an affinity that they share. We also have the Knight, which is your classical hero, your classical monster catcher. They are a straightforward combat class. They're excellently trained, and they're very good at what they do, directing their MajiMonsters in battle. We have the Ranger, who is more of a grizzled outdoorsman. They're very, very focused from spending their time out in the wild, which means they can ignore distractions, and they're actually the best at actually binding monsters to their rules. We have the Scoundrel, which is more of like an archetypal rogue, not so much in appearance, but in attitude. They believe that they are owed what's due to them, and they will take any means necessary to get what's done. This translates into a lot of dirty fighting and a lot of underhanded attacks that cripple their opponents with like conditions like poison or being caught on fire, things like that. And then lastly, help me out here, John. Which one am I missing?
The Scholar.
Oh, favorite. Yes. Oh, yeah, my favorite. The Scholar is a class that has dedicated more time to research and rediscovery of these techniques that have been lost to the old empire. And while they are not great combatants, they're the most unpredictable, because we mentioned before how you can change the techniques that your monster uses, or you can augment them. They can do it a step further by changing these techniques in ways that no other class can. So fighting a Scholar means, having the most unpredictable battle.
That's a great breakdown for him. Because
I know, I get a little long-winded.
No, definitely. Each one deserves a few minutes to talk about. Heck, and the nice thing is it fills out each. Somebody's gonna be able to find one that they like. And then of course add the character element to it, which is actually the role playing to it.
Right, and that's one thing I should mention. We really believe in not being bound by a lot of the rules. So a lot of the classes have archetype abilities, but a lot of the abilities that a binder can get are not limited by their class. A lot of them are a general pool that any character can select from.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So, and of course, the binders can help the monsters during the fight. But one quick question is, how does a binder fight other binders? Can they have just binder versus binder encounters?
Yeah. In fact, this, kind of getting back to the system, when we first started this, binders had different stats than monsters did, because we did not want to encourage monster versus binder fighting, but that was really, really tough on a mechanics viewpoint to keep that. So all the binders have the same stats as the monsters. It's just much, much less so. So if two binders wanted to fight, they could resolve their attacks the same way that you could do combat.
All right, excellent. So I'm a huge fan of that, of having the same stats. It's just to the 10th degree for the monsters, because binders are squishy and taste good with ketchup.
Yeah, you got it.
There's a reason that they're afraid of the monsters.
Yeah.
So for the default setting, have you guys set up any antagonistic binders out there already? Team Rocket, so to speak?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of antagonists ready. There's the first adventure path that we're writing is called Echoes of the Lost Empire, and it literally has to deal with establishing the world setting of elements of the old empire creeping back into play now that binders have become prevalent. So there's those, whatever you want to call them, like heretics or these people that are clinging to this lost civilization. There's also just binders that have gone rogue, because the power of being able to direct or capture a MajiMonster is incredible. So, you have those types of binders that are willing to exploit that power. And then there's also cultists, marauders, the typical type of thing you'd expect in a setting where there's a dystopia, where the world's been ruined. As far as like a big bad evil guy or anyone like with a specific name, we've actually left some of that up to player created content for the Kickstarter. You can, at a certain level you pledge, you can actually help us create an antagonist that will appear in the adventure path. It's not something that we've developed with a name yet.
Okay, great. Because, hey, I'm a GM, and I love to come up with the worst big bad guy. And I could just see some really talented, concordant 12-year-old who's got Godzilla and just controls a town.
That's awesome.
You bring me what I want, or I let Godzilla loose.
That's perfect.
So, for game mechanic-wise, is this going to be a grid map style game or a theater of the mind style?
It's
or
more
both?
of a grid. It definitely lends itself to being played on a grid, but you can play it as a theater of the mind kind of game. We assume that most of the stuff out of combat would be that way.
John actually yelled at me because when we were getting our con materials together, I wrote all the ranges in feet instead of squares, and it really confused everybody. we always use a combat grid and always have for as long as I can remember, for even for other role playing games. So we just kind of naturally went that route when we were writing MajiMonsters. I played a lot of Theater of the Mind with second edition Dungeons and Dragons before a lot of that stuff came into play, so I still like that. But I think John's right. It's probably better for role playing, for the social encounters. Combat, I think, in any role playing game is better when you can see that, especially when you have a strategy element.
Yeah, I definitely agree about that one. Usually I always try to keep my games 50-50. If it's not combat related, they don't need 100% representation of what the area looks like. But,
absolutely.
So that way it leaves a little more freedom to the players getting to ad-lib of what's going around them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anything that helps pull a player into it, it's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so now that we've pretty much covered most of the questions I had about MajiMonsters itself, your guys' company, Last Night Games, and that's KNIGHT, which I like. How long have you guys been around?
Jesus. Well, we've been friends for years, but the company was formed, what was it, April?
Yeah, April was our official formation date, but we've known each other for over 10 years. I met Dan, I think, in 2002.
Yeah, most first year of college, so it's been a while. And Jim, we're late night games, and it's funny that you say last night games because we've actually got no, it's fine. It's funny because we've actually got that a couple times already, and I'm wondering if maybe we should get a domain or something.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say last night games, so I wonder if people just see that.
Oh my, I'm sorry about that.
Hey man, it's okay. We don't care.
So it's fantastic that you guys are basically a core gaming group who got together and made the game as a group. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been making games just among ourselves for years. Obviously we play published games as well, and then sometimes we'll make our own games just for fun. We made this back in 2012. And Dan put the majority of it together because we wanted to play something that was similar to Pokemon, but with more of a D&D setting and rules. And so we couldn't really find anything. I mean, there was a couple online things that we saw, but we decided just to make our own system instead. And after we played it for a while, we were like, this is really fun. We should try and actually publish it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
I mean, we think the best part of that is not only just playing the game to, enjoy the game, but like afterwards we would go out and get some food and then just sit down and talk about it for 4 hours about what was working, what wasn't working, make a change, play it the next time. And then most of the times we knew what right away. Like when I told you we changed how experience worked, we knew the minute we did that was the right call. And, being able to come to those decisions together through role-playing and discussion has been really rewarding. And
that goes back to you guys being together so long as a group that you're willing to be open and fluid and communicate and let things organically develop.
Right.
So quick question about MajiMonsters. Will you guys be hitting any conventions this or next year that you have planned?
Yeah, we will. Well, actually, this upcoming weekend, which is Valentine's Day weekend, we're going to Katsucon, which is in the DC National Harbor, and that's an anime convention, but they're going to have a tabletop room, so we'll be there. And then we also have plans to go to Gen Con, which is at the end of July into August, and that's in Indianapolis. And also on the 21st of February, we are going to a comic book store in Pennsylvania called Planet X Comics. And that's not a convention, but we're going to demo the game. It's going to be the last weekend that our Kickstarter is live. So
that's awesome. Because it's definitely good to know that, we'll see you guys popping around at different places so more folks can see the game and get to play it.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll set up a couple more conventions here and there, depending on what we're available for. A friend of ours, he said he'd be willing to go to, I think there's a Comic-Con in Pennsylvania. He wanted to demo the game at. It might be Philadelphia Comic-Con.
I don't remember. I know it's definitely Pennsylvania. I think it's a special kind of. I can't remember.
It is. Wait, here it is. Central Pennsylvania Comic-Con.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't Philly.
Yeah, it's in March 14th.
All right, great. So when the game does come out, will there be any online support or online community presence for it? I'm thinking we kind of covered that, but
yeah. I mean, the thing is that we have more prepared and ready than we could possibly fit in the rule book that we budgeted for. So monsters is one thing. We've already dedicated time to having a section on how to make your own homebrew monsters, because we just know, especially within the past 2 weeks of starting the Kickstarter, that that's something people want to do. So, we'll probably have at least 100 some monsters, but we'll have many more that we can put online. We will also have different supplements, like you mentioned, antagonists. So maybe we could just make a bestiary of rival binders, so to speak, as well as just different adventure settings, different gaming aids, things like that. And that's actually, we've rolled that into the Kickstarter as part of as part of online content. Anyone that is pledged at $35 or higher will get that. It's all going to be included up front. Past that, we're not really set up for forums or anything like that now on our website because of our own limitations with that technology. But I mean, it's something that I've definitely considered. I've got a couple friends that are good with that type of stuff, and we know there's already people out there talking about the game. So we may as well have it happening, right there on our website, so we can, assist and help out. We're big on the community, so you said that you see a lot of back and forth on our Kickstarter page. That's not going to go away anytime soon, because we want to help our players out, and we love hearing feedback from them.
See, that's awesome, because I do love that you guys added the create your own MajiMonster on the Kickstarter. So that way, if someone wants, they can make their own monster, send it into you guys, and bam, they can say, I made that.
Yep. Well, that's part of the reason why we did it. It was because, we had the tiers out there, and we understand $250 is a lot of money. We're not asking for a lot of people, and the fact that we've already had 70% of them sell already is really
awesome.
Really thrilling, yeah. But we've had people, I've had people call me. I've had friends that I haven't talked to in 4 years say, hey, man, I saw this on Facebook. Dude, you got to put this in the game. Remember when we played Pokemon and we said this would be a cool Pokemon? And I'll be like, all right. So we've been getting emails, backer comments, stuff like that. So we just said we should do this. And it actually happened in time that we could get it ready to tell people about it at KatsuCon too. So we're hoping we get a good pull at KatsuCon with that type of stuff.
That's awesome. So for someone looking to start, running the game with their friends, what do they need to buy to start? Just bare minimum or to the max? What do you guys think?
I'd recommend a copy of the book. I have a hard time playing without a hard copy of the book. I know plenty of people can do the D&D or whatever with a digital copy, especially if they have an iPad or something like that. I like having the actual thing in front.
We're old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would we like hardcovers?
You'll be able to print character sheets, stuff like that. Especially since it's a new system, you'll probably want to use character sheets. And then, dice gaming mat is recommended but not necessary, and whatever goes along with that. Because, there's a lot of moving parts here. The monsters have their own sections with their traits, abilities, and techniques. And then, but the techniques are listed a lot like spells would be in a player's handbook. So there's a lot of back and forth referencing. So instead of having to have, one book where you're going back and forth the whole time, you're probably going to want to write all that down in one spot where you can reference them. In our early versions of the games, character sheets were, what were they, 3-inch binders?
Pretty much. Each character had basically 4 or 5 pages of information they needed, and
yeah, so
we cut down on that a lot.
A lot of what we've been doing is paring stuff down to the point where it's not as clunky, it's not too much record keeping, but it's still complex enough that players that like having that element to combat and role playing, your conventional min-maxers and number crunchers will still be able to play and love this game, but it's not going to be so much that a player is going to be intimidated by picking up a character sheet.
Yeah. But obviously, if you're just curious about it, but you don't want to fully commit to the book, that's one of the reasons we added the $10 tier, where you just get a couple pre-made characters, a couple monsters, just enough to learn the game.
Yeah, that's why I went for the binder one, just so I can have 2 books to go bouncing around at the table, because everybody, whenever you're gaming, somebody wants the book and somebody else needs the book. So that way I've got 2 copies floating around on the gaming table. As well as the player's kit, which is going to be a nice touch for everybody.
Yeah, the player's kit, we have a full set of dice, a full set of character sheets. We have gaming tokens, and actually we saw a lot of places at Unpub that print for indie game developers, and I might want to contact them about the gaming tokens, just for keeping track of status effects, things like that. as well as copies of character sheets and everything professionally printed for you to use.
Nice.
Good choice.
Yeah. The player kits make it handy because I can just hand them that while I'm using the book.
Yeah, that's true.
So just as a backup plan, in case the Kickstarter doesn't happen, which, by the way, everyone out there listening, start jumping on that Kickstarter. I want it to go through for myself. I'm going to be purely selfish here. What's the worst case scenario if you guys don't make the goal?
Well, if we don't make the goal, we'll take a look at our options. Right now, we're kind of getting to the point where I feel like if we were to end right now where we're at, we would succeed if we did it on a print on demand. We kind of have mixed feelings on that because it means that, yeah, you don't have to donate as much money to us, but it also means that you're going to have to spend money at a different spot for whatever. We haven't really looked too far into that, but we know that we could really, really save a lot of money on our production budget. So what were our final number? What would we say we could do it at if we did print on demand, John?
We probably could have a goal of about 7,000, which would mainly be for artwork, and it would be enough for all the copyrights and setting up the book and everything. So then we could provide just PDFs, and then we would have some kind of print on demand option, probably through something like Drive-Thru RPG.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also going to consider by how much we miss by. Like, if we get to like 11,000 out of 12,000, it's likely that if we did it again with the amount of support that we've gotten, that we could hit that number again. We really want to be able to print these books to give to you guys and to get everything through. So we're hoping that we can make it through. But it's obviously something we had to consider going into it. This is our first time on Kickstarter, so the amount of research we have done on Kickstarter has been intimidating, both before and after. But we're pretty confident because, and I'm not sure if we talked about this earlier, we know that the majority of funding comes in the beginning and the end of campaigns. So we're really out there to get everyone we can to get on board here in the middle of the campaign. But we expect a boost at the end because Kickstarter will actually make you much more visible as your campaign comes to an end.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys did an awesome job on your Kickstarter. I mean, for a first time doing it, you guys did a fantastic job.
Thanks, man. We have been doing this since April, so it's such a relief to have it out.
I would email people for advice, people who had done successful Kickstarters, and this is back in like April and May, and they're like, "Wow, you're getting a jump on it now," and I'm like, "Yeah, I want to be prepared."
Yeah. It's been so much fun. I mean, it's been more work than I think any of us thought it would be, the actual fundraising part of it. But it's definitely been it's definitely been a lot.
But yeah, your work is definitely showing in. I mean, you guys did a great job.
Thanks.
So, quick question, personally speaking, for both you, John and Dan, what's going to keep you up late tonight after this interview?
Oh God. I mean, I really want to hit $9,000 backing by Valentine's Day, because then I get to draw a "It's over 9,000" meme with Vegeta and MajiMonsters. So that's been my thing. I have calmed down immensely since we first started this, because the first couple of days was not good for me. But yeah, I'd really like to get to that point to before next week, because that's also KatsuCon, where we're going to have another presence at, and hopefully that'll give us a bump.
Yeah, if I agree with Dan. Like, if we could get up to 75% before next weekend, it would make us feel really comfortable going into KatsuCon, because we would be, really almost there. The funny thing is, Dan was really freaking out like the first couple days, which is when we got probably the most of our backers, because we had a newsletter set up ahead of time, and we had been doing some advertising, and we went to Gen Con last year, and so once we went live, a lot of people backed us right away because they knew it was coming, and then it's obviously dropped off a little bit, which is the norm. It drops off after your first week a little bit. But Dan, right off the bat, was just like, "Oh my God, we only got $2,000 today." He's like, that's barely anything. And then like a week later, where it's like, oh, we only had like 2 backers today. It feels much worse.
Yeah.
Well, watching a Kickstarter is like watching your child on the bicycle for the first time, and you're like, go, go, go. Oh, God, stop, fall, crash. Nothing that day. Okay, go, go, go. I mean, it is extremely nerve-wracking. I mean, I've done a Kickstarter as well, and you just keep watching it incessantly, like one of those people who watch their email constantly.
You are not kidding.
And you get excited every new one you've got. You want to hurry up and comment back to that person and say, thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely like that, and you joke, but John and I spent the day together yesterday, and that's precisely how I was. It's been 20 minutes. Someone check a Kickstarter.
It could have happened. Did we get a comment? Could we get a backer?
Yeah.
And for the record, I do like the Kickstarter app for that, because that way I can carry the phone around and it'll tell me.
Yeah, it's true.
So is there anything else that I didn't ask that you'd like our listeners to know about?
I mean, first, I just want to thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for the back. We really appreciate it. As far as anyone out there listening, if it's something that you're anyway interested in, check us out. I mean, we will answer any questions. I think we've made that clear. We're here for the community. Even if you don't want to back us, because a Kickstarter, I think you have to be a backer to ask to do a comment. You can email us at MajiMonsters.com. And if it's something, you're a Pokemon fan, you're a Monster Catcher fan, you're a D&D fan, this has got a little bit of something for everybody. And if you like both of those things, you're definitely going to love this.
I just want people out there to know, we didn't do any of the silly backyard levels. Like, we write a haiku for you, or we scream your name while we're making a pizza or something like that. But if you want us to do that and that'll make us back you, then like by all means, just send us an email and we'll do this thing for you. Because that is how committed we are to this.
Oh, I will also say one of the things we've clarified very recently for our backers, we've had a ton of people ask about playtesting, and only very recently have we said, hey, listen, backers are going to have the first opportunity to be playtesters. We have 2 sessions planned, one for the summer and one for the fall, and that will give us enough time to take feedback and get everything together for the actual publication of the book. So if this is something you're interested in, you got to be a backer. So that's the first part. So that's the only place where we kind of have to draw the line on it. But otherwise, we love hearing ideas. You do not have to be a backer if you want to contribute to MajiMonster. I know you had mentioned that earlier. We just put that up actually today about if you have an idea for something you want in this, go ahead and give it. We are very open to all the community ideas.
And crowdsourcing is a great thing.
It is.
And also about the artwork, you guys have fantastic artwork already that you're showing on the website as well as on the videos.
Oh, thanks, man.
And don't forget you guys are on Facebook too.
Yes, we are.
For all the
Facebook
Facebookers.
and Twitter. Yeah, Facebook and Twitter at MajiMonsters.
Yep.
Yeah, Dan actually did some of that artwork.
Yeah, I do a lot of the art. I do a lot of the class artwork, and some of the monsters. You might not be able to tell the difference because I'm purposely trying to draw like the one guy that we've commissioned to do a lot of our monsters, and we have a couple artists that we've commissioned for like backgrounds and stuff like that too. It's been a fun experience.
That's fantastic. All right, I'd just like to say, Dan and John, thank you for coming on the Creative Playing Podcast Network. I'll be getting this edited, and it should be out by Tuesday. I'll go ahead and shoot you an email just to let you know when it's out. And
Awesome.
Definitely, I'm hoping this gets you guys more attention so we can get some more backers on the Kickstarter.
Hey Jim, we appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
All right,
Yeah.
you're very welcome. All right, and folks out there, thank you for listening.
Hi, this is Jim from Creative Playing Podcast Network, Ragnarok and Roll, and D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First, I'd like to say thank you for rating us on iTunes and RPGpodcast.com, and I just wanted to let you know that we're now on Patreon.com. It's a great site to help support us and keep us making more podcasts, and we can occasionally give you guys surprises if you're a patron. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/CPPN. That's www.patreon.com/CPPN, and help us in any way you can. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.